3 devs make one game across 6 regular Earth hours, but here's the catch. Individually, we each only have 2 hours to work on the game before we zip it up and pass it on to the next developer. Sound fun? Well, it was, so let's get into it. The 3 developers taking part in this challenge were Dennis from Fuelled by Caffeine, a skilled Unity game dev with a YouTube channel full of brilliant tutorials and projects. His latest in-progress project is a recreation of Fallout in Unity, a feat that he is achieving with brilliant precision and attention to detail. Zoop, the talented lead developer from Hyve, currently working on an incredible looking game called Windshire. Everything about this game's development looks superb, and you can follow it each step of the way in the numerous devlogs on the Hyve YouTube channel. And myself, a 2D game maker pixel person with almost no experience in Unity. Did I mention we're making this project in Unity? Anyway, be sure to sub to each of our channels, and without further ado, let's start the relay. Well, not quite. So we started off by meeting and discussing what sort of game we wanted at the end of our relay challenge. This was to ensure we'd all be running in roughly the same metaphorical direction. We threw around a few ideas, but it was difficult to scope something for just 6 hours of dev work, especially considering all of us have different coding styles, different experience, and different preferences. But after a bit of discussion, Dennis drew up this cool idea that you're seeing on screen, wonderfully drawn in the world's greatest piece of artistic software, is MS Paint. The core idea was that you have a central player controller of 4 coloured balls, which the player can spin around by swiping left or right. Enemy balls would then fly in from the edges of the screen towards the centre, and you have to rotate the player to match the enemy ball colour in order to destroy it. It was a simple idea, but it seemed novel and unique, as well as being something that would make a great mobile game. After that core idea was settled, we had a brief chat about other additions like power-ups and game feel, and soon felt confident we could smash this project out of the park. So with that sorted, we can actually start the relay. So let the relay begin. Dennis started the relay, and without going into excessive detail, he got the core mechanics of the game down. The circles in the centre spin around using either touch controls or the mouse, and enemies spawn from the edge of the screen moving towards the centre. As you get more points, the amount of colours on the paddle increases. If you want a full rundown on this part of the game's development, be sure to check out the video over on Dennis's channel, Fuelled by Caffeine, after this video. Zoop then took the second leg of the relay. His main aim was to add a couple of power-ups to the game. In the end, he added a size increase power-up for the player, as well as a time slow-mo power-up. He also added the crucial game over state to the game by adding lives. This was very important because up until this point, you could match the colours wrong and there would be no consequences. Anyway, as with the first leg, be sure to check out Zoop's part of the challenge on his channel after this video. In the background, you can see a full time lapse of my 2 hours working on the game, while I ramble on about my development process. With my time, I really wanted to just try and juice up the game as much as possible. Dennis and Zoop did a great job of getting down a lot of the core mechanics, meaning I felt I would contribute most if I focused on polish. Now, I'm a complete Unity rookie, so implementing each new part in this game felt like dragging my feet through mud, as I'm so unfamiliar with the specific systems and UI of Unity. Luckily, Dennis was on hand to throw me more than a few pointers. After familiarising myself with the current state of the project, the first thing I added was a smoothing to the circle size increase power-up. I thought they'd look better if they gradually increased in size instead of suddenly changing. After this, I updated the colours for the game. I feel like this is something a lot of solo devs like myself often forget about, but doing something as simple as using a curated colour palette can be a cheap fix for the game's colour scheme. Next, I added some particle effects. Now, I know Unity's particle system is heralded as this one system fits all thing that is all powerful, all knowing, and just super effective at everything it tries to do, and that might be true. But at least for my first introduction to actually using it, I didn't find it intuitive at all. I realised that this is a skill that would come with practice, but I think the game dev community on YouTube definitely built this up in my mind to be better than I found it to start with. After a while though, I did wrangle it into making a small explosion looking thing for when the circles are destroyed on the center balls. After some more scripting, I eventually got the balls to trigger the particle effect, which was really exciting, but the explosions were just white particles at the moment. Really, we wanted the particles to match the colour of the ball that had been destroyed, and this ended up being one of the things that just took forever to work out. It was one of those moments back and forth from the Unity documentation to try and work out why the particles weren't having their colour set properly. After a while though, it got working. After that, I looked at making some adjustments to the UI. I felt like going for this sort of symmetrical look would look a bit prettier, as well as making the game more readable as a whole. I then followed a random 17-step guide to adding a bloom shader to the game. This is one of those things that really confuses me about Unity. Like, with the guide, putting a bloom shader on was ridiculously easy, but I have no idea how long this would have taken without the tutorial. It took me about 4 hours to write a bloom shader in GLSL with GameMaker, so I guess using this tutorial for Unity was a massive time save. With the bloom shader added, I felt the game was really shaping up into a rounded experience. There was still a good amount of time left, and so I set about adding trails to the enemy circles. This helped distinguish them from the playables in the screen center, and looked really cool overall. The colour of the trail effect was really easy to set, but then another roadblock was hit when trying to make the trail fade out towards the end. Although I think this was resolved by changing the render type of the trail. By the time the trail was added, there was only about 15 minutes left on my timer. I started to make some sound effects for the game with BFXR, but they were all too crunchy and pixely, which just didn't match the clean look of the game we had made. So instead, I loaded up LMMS and found a nice bell sound. I then made 3 sound effects from this that all played a different note in a chord. When a ball was destroyed, a random note from the chord would play. My choice of sounds meant that any subsequent random notes would harmonise with the ones that are already playing to keep everything sounding nice. And with that last addition, the time was up. It really flew by way faster than you'd expect. And this is the final game. I'm actually really happy with how the game turned out. It has a slick, clean feel, and I'm amazed by what we achieved in such a short time period, especially considering we each worked on it separately, one after another. Both Dennis and Zoop did a fantastic job on the first and second legs of this relay, and really did well at making their code readable and modifiable, which I think made adding things at the end way easier than I was anticipating. There are a couple of things I think would have been great to add if we had more time, such as a high score counter, perhaps some tranquil backing music as well. I think another key bit to improve would be adding some more negative feedback when a player makes an error, but we all added so much to the project and used up the entirety of our time, so I can't help but be happy with this final result. This project was a ton of fun to take part in, and I learnt so much about Unity from Dennis and Zoop. So a huge thanks to them, and be sure to check out their perspectives on the code relay at their channels, as you can probably learn more from them than from me. I'll be back again next week with another Project Drifter Devlog, so stay tuned for that. As always, subscribe and like if you enjoyed this video. Feel free to follow me on Twitter, or even join the Discord where you can ask me questions directly. And until next time, goodbye.